Happy days. Okay, so today what I was the topic of discussion was the Wholisound shortcut, and so what I was going to do is give you some history today. Now we have been working on the past couple weeks of working on the chanting, that aspect. We've talked about harmonics. We've talked about opening the heart space. So we have been really working pretty much on that sound connection. So it's worth it to give you history as to how that evolved with me. Now, for a lot of you, you've all heard this before, and hopefully, by putting it in a context, a better context of history, you'll be able to get what we're trying to say. And especially since we've been discussing so much about sound and harmonics in the past couple weeks. So here we go. I was very much into the mind-body connection, okay? And one always has to remember, why did Vince get into this? Okay, it's because of that 12-year-old near-death experience, and going into the light, and then coming out and reading about Yeshiva and how he described the exact same journey, and he created Aikido from his experience in the light, which he called the Aiki, love, and that force was love. So Aikido, throwing people around and banging them all over the place, was the art of love, okay? The way of the Aiki. So Aiki translates nicely to Tai Chi. So eventually, about 8 years later, I discovered Tai Chi and started practicing Tai Chi because that was more akin to me than the Aikido. Aikido didn't make sense. But the Tai Chi and the movements and the forms did. And that Kung Fu Chinese methodology made a lot more sense. So, as I said, I always had this gateway that opened up after that experience of being able to access non-ordinary information, and just downloads and dumps and things were coming in all the time, and the metaphysical realm was wide open. And in the beginning, this was crazy. It made me literally insane, because you can't be 12 years old having hormonal rushes and then having your reality break around you in a time when nobody believes in this in 1966, 67. Okay, except for the people who were doing acid. Okay, and they were no help. When you're 12, hey, that's not a way to go. But I could see where people easily would get involved with drugs, if they had an experience like that, or an apnea experience that induced something similar to that, because they'd always be questing to go back to the source. So in opening that window, you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. And it was the exercise that kept me sane. It was doing first those martial arts and then getting heavily involved in athletics, okay? And physically training all the time, hours per day. That got me sane. And in retrospect, knowing what I know now, and also knowing what we know about the brain and the mind-body connection, is, everything was so wrong. So the CIA has, as you were saying, has all these ideas about what Monroe was doing based on false premises. Okay, so we know today from our science observations of the brain and the nervous system, back then, everybody thought your brain was dying all the time and you were losing brain cells all the time. So that was completely wrong. And Bob was building new brain. He was doing neurogenesis with his binaural beats. So that was actually creating your perception, your ability to perceive. It wasn't, that the binaural beats, they were actually developing tissue. They were developing energy that in your system and your entire nervous system, because your entire nervous system was connected. So in many key people, this offered opportunities of healing, okay, because it was connecting, you to your nervous system in a new way and developing new neural pathways. But everybody was so head-centric and so brain-centric at the time and mind-centric at the time that they weren't seeing the overall view of that. So when you come into it, as I did, from the body point of view, by the time I got to the Monroe Institute, I had already had most of the experiences that Bob was offering. So I wasn't looking at it as the experience, I was looking at it as the method. How does this sound technology produce the methods that I already knew how to do? Leave my body, do, at that point, empty force and things. Okay, so when we step back, is the pivotal changing point for me was when I went into the empty force training. And up until that point, I didn't do much meditation. Okay, so we're jumping into 1985. I wasn't doing a lot of meditation other than just kind of sitting there laying for a minute or two and, clearing my mind. But now I was starting to do the qigong that was to produce the empty force, the pushing the wall, the 1,000 things. And I was doing a lot of the 7 principle exercises, doing that for 30 minutes, 3-4 times a day. Okay, and that's the major transformative point, is you take that. And we'll have to step sideways a little bit, and we'll look at what that does to your body. And now I know what it does to your brain, but then we didn't know that the brain was being influenced by that, but we did know about the body, because in 1990, Dean Ornish published his paper, or maybe it was 92, published his paper on reversing heart disease, atherosclerosis in hearts. Okay, because at this time there was no statins, and in Dean Ornish's world, fats and cholesterol were causing heart disease. And so he did this radically low-fat diet, and then he had people doing yoga. Okay, so he's taking people that were senior citizens mostly in their 60s. Okay, so now you go back to 1990, and senior citizens of that time period, there were none Americans who accepted that yoga idea or meditation. That was not their generation. Okay, they were technically even before the beginning of the Great Generation. They were Depression era people. All right, so the acceptance of this concept was really, really hard. So the sample group required that they do 4 hours of meditation and yoga per day. Okay, now why he did that, I have no idea. Okay, that is, you want to talk about unscientific. You create a study where you're trying to just, do the fats thing, see if the fats work, and then you add 4 hours of meditation and yoga on top of that. That's dumb. Okay? But the thing is it worked. He would take in arteries that were 80%, 90% occluded, and with no other change except doing 4 hours of yoga and meditation and having zero fat, they reduced their occlusions down to, 10%, in most cases, zero. All right? So they radically did something that was impossible, that was never replicated without the yoga and meditation. And thus, that published paper, talk about following science, that one paper went out and people immediately were put on low-fat diets. And majority of them got sick. Okay? And fortunately, they stopped that when they created statins, okay, which created its own nightmare. Okay. Now, at the same time, this physician in Malaysia believed that there was absences of energies and nutrients that was causing these occlusions. And he did the same kind of study. Okay. He took people with occluded hearts and he gave them a herbal medication. And that herbal medication was going to restore the energetic balance, was going to restore nutritional things and stuff. And he required that they do 4 hours of qigong every day. Qigong, meditation, breathing. Okay? Same results. These people got rid of all their occlusions, or most of them. All right?
Really?
Huh?
Clash. Oh.
Right. So now what ends up happening is his doesn't get replicated because without the qigong and the meditation, it didn't work. So at that point, I really knew that qigong reversed heart disease. Okay, because yoga and qigong are really the same damn thing. But it said meditation and stuff. Now, why is it that they do that? Clearly the fats didn't do it. Clearly the herbs didn't do it. So why is it that they did that? Okay, that means that the cause of the disease was something that was fixed by motion, slow motion, meditation, and relaxation. Okay, and a lot of what we know today is that inflammation is the major cause of this kind of disease, and bracing in the arterial walls and things. So we can see where that happens. Okay, so that was the first breakout of that mind-body movement is more important than chemistry stuff. Okay, so that's a big thing. From my point of view, that was a big testing paradigm shift. Is these two tests show chemistry is not involved. So what are the things involved? So now we're going to go back. So when you're doing this meditation process of pushing the wall, now we know that you're building brain. You're building new nervous system. And what we also know is you're reducing inflammation in the system. You're fortifying the body. You're healing the body and levels that you're doing it. So it's like Kurt, doing the ruler every day. You do these hundreds and hundreds of repetitions, and you're transforming everything there is about you in all aspects. The mind, the body, the circulatory system. Okay? And we tend to think about this as just exercise. And we tend to think about, okay, maybe this will work on the body and all. But that repetition creates that cerebellum process. It induces the hormonal activity. Okay, it changes everything. But it also creates a rhythmic harmonic. Okay? And that's not important for the healing aspect, although it is contributory, but it is important in understanding how the nervous system works and how, let's say, empty force and metaphysical forces work. Okay, so when I started pushing the wall and I started doing the 7 principles that much, and then adding this wall pushing afterwards, one of the first things I wanted to do afterwards was just sit down. And when I started sitting down, I started to meditate. And I said, whoa, this is the way you should meditate, is do your qigong, do your wall pushing, then just take that super buzz that you're feeling in your body, all aspects of your body. So if you see how it works, you wake up, you do your qigong, 7 principles, that loosens and stretches the body, starts to engage you, get your breathing going. Then you do this repetition over and over and over, okay? And you get into that flow state. Now, when you get into that flow state, there is a sense of sound and light, okay? Because it kind of puts you in what we would call focus 21 state. You move from a 10 state, you go into this expanded awareness where you don't feel your body anymore, and then you're in this other whole different state. And at first I called it the state of white, all right? And you feel your body producing a buzz, okay? Because all your cells are tuning up with each other. They're creating a harmonic. Now, again, when you're looking for something that's controlling the mind, you're looking at trying to stop the chattering. And you start getting so involved in meta-processing, what you're doing in your thought process is actively observing, trying to reason, that you don't let go. And it's only in those rare moments when you're pushing 800 repetitions, 900 repetitions, that the sheer act of exhaustion makes you just stop thinking. It breaks down your brain. Now, also, I started working on a lot more holding the ball for longer periods of time, and eventually worked up to 30 minutes, okay? And by saying working up to is working with that staying relaxed. And you find that when you're holding the ball a long time, you're fighting it, you're fighting it, you're fighting it. You're thinking, you're thinking, you're thinking. Okay, and again, you have to go through to the point where you just can't think anymore. Then you learn the triggers of how to shut that off. But again, if you're coming from the mind-centric, the brain-centric world, you don't shut your head off. And this is the major flaw that we still have in this society, is we're saying it's all powered by the mind. And it isn't. None of it is. And until you're willing to get rid of that other false scientific premise, okay, of the neocortex controls reality, which it does, but it's a lie, until you're ready to get to the truth of this, you won't let go. You always want to have the narrator there. And you never had it when you were a young child. You had to learn how to create that. All right, so let's go back to this now. So you get this hum. And as I said, there was this, when he totally let go, there was, I remember the breakthrough. It was just like being in Focus 21 in movement. Everything around you is kind of white. You can't discern anything. And I was so blown away because I was present but not present. It was, in a sense, like being in a portal. Okay? And you can do this. You've all done Focus 21, sitting in a chair. But back then, no one had done that stuff. Until I started to introduce that at Monroe, of doing the focused states while you're doing exercise in 1991, 92, it wasn't being done. People weren't doing it. They just lay down and dissociate their body through Focus 12 and stuff like that. And we were the first to say, no, here, anchor these states to your body. Now, Bob had done that with his H+ program, all right, of being able to anchor states, but not to the level that we were doing. So movements of peace evolved from that chakra exercise where we literally created a harmonic for each energy center, okay? and we anchored it to the different forms. Okay, so that people would go through a meditation, they would get that harmonic resonating in their body. So this was a time we were putting more tonal experience in your body rather than just in the brain waves. Okay, we were actually saying, all right, we want a kinesthetic experience. So we're kind of doing this in a 10 state. And Skip Atwater had created this system called alpha suppression. And we were doing that, and we're tweaking these theta orchestrations so that people were having these kinesthetic experiences. Plus, of course, the verbalization in the instructions brought people to feel this part of your body, using all those feeling terms rather than these oblique energy terms. All right, so as people were doing this, they could get these sensations. So then I'd take them out and I'd introduce them to the chakras, okay? And then, using the hand postures. And then we would go back and forth like an H+ drill. Okay, now feel this energy, feel this experience, feel this, okay? Going back and forth. And eventually, when they were moving their hands, they were creating a pattern. So, of course, then I said, well, okay, let's go and let's move this pattern. Okay, so now you're getting this energetic state that you've created. Okay, so now I know that that's all cellular movement. That's all field effects of the different cellular aspects. We're creating it in cellular movement. So it's much easier to do now. There, it was still mind-centric. Okay, trying to control it with your mind and not letting go. But once you got into the feelings and you can feel those tones and you can feel your body, you could let go and have more profound experiences. So this would help with healing. It was shortly thereafter that I got my sound table, and I was able to even work on that, tweaking that even better. All right, so going back to pushing the wall, that transitional state of working first from qigong, then into this, then into meditation. Meditation really became astral projection sitting. And it was the linking up of that particular harmonic that you were creating here in this movement, okay, with the out-of-body experience of a focus 12-10 state, somewhere in that range, where you have a very lucid physical out-of-body experience. So the first psychokinetic event I had, and I've explained this, is I was laying in bed and I was looking at a smoke detector in a hotel. And I floated out of my body and went to the little red light on the smoke detector, went into the light, and then the smoke detector went off, which in a hotel is not a good idea. Okay, and then I'm back in bed and I'm in a paralytic state, which we know what that feels like. You can't get it out of your body. You're just stuck. You're in this in-between place. And I just literally willed myself up, and I popped up off the bed and bounced and got up, and I ran to the door to see if people were evacuating the building, because I was hoping that this wasn't linked into some board, that it was just a local smoke detector. And the next thing you know, you have fire departments coming into your room and all. So it turned out it wasn't linked in. It was just a smoke detector. And that became my signature, setting off smoke detectors. But it took a long time. It took a number of experiences of this leaving your body, entering into another object, and that merging with the object. And that was the infrasonic harmonics. Okay, the creation of the infrasonic harmonics here, first, it loosened you up so that you could leave your body. Secondly, it was building new brain, so your perception was greater. And thirdly, this harmonic was a power force in itself that could radiate into your forms and also enter into your meditations. So it was bringing that link of what I thought at the time was the mind, body, spirit together. And what I learned was there was no mind. Okay, that part was not real. It was the heart mind that was involved, and the heart mind controls the body. So that mind was always engaged. This mind was separating the engagement. Okay, but you still, even today, have to beat yourself to death in order to get there oftentimes, unless you're willing to let go. All right, and how do you let go? Well, you beat yourself until you can learn to do it regularly. Okay, it's kind of simple. Or you learn the shortcuts. If you engage your mind doing a practice, this is why prayer and chant is so important. All right, now we're going to tie this together. Is if you master languaging where you are speaking presently, which you all know how to do, okay, you don't think. So if you do repetitive prayer or any kind of repetitive sound pattern, whether it's vowels or other things, and you practice mastering that with clarity over and over, you will not be able to think. You will create a harmonic. Okay? And that teaches you that gateway, but more importantly, it starts to teach you how to control the tracheal rings to shut that part of the brain off. So you don't have to go through hours of prayer to learn how to do it. You just set your tracheal rings as they relax into that particular pattern. And ultimately, this becomes what we would say controlling these states by breath. Okay, it's not the breath, it's creating a tube alignment. The air passing over those tubes creates a harmonic, and that harmonic goes through the body, and you're there. It creates a state of being that can be a metaphysical state of being or a physical state of being. All seems rather, when you lay it out, it all seems kind of simple, but it's all the little saboteurs in between. Okay, so moving forward. I did not have any control over that power because I didn't know all this stuff that I know. And so I started really focusing, because I was mind-centric, on mastering this Hemi-sync. And the more I worked on the Hemi-sync, and especially when I was creating the kinesthetic patterns from it, the more I realized how to create my own stuff. Okay, this just wasn't working. And the problem was, I could do it through movement, but I couldn't do it through the process of sound. And this really took me about till 1995 when I met Sherry Edwards and heard how she did it. And also I got my degree in homeopathy, which of course is energetic medicine. I'm trying to find a way to do this. And I realized that I have my sound table, I hear Sherry Edwards, I have the homeopathy, and I'm working this together of how do you create energetic states in the physical body that transcend the physical body. Okay, that's what the difficult part was. All right, and I had all these means of doing that, but I couldn't record it. So the first thing I did is I started recording the meditations, the White Willow meditations, because we were also doing a lot of Hemi-sync training, and we were doing a lot of, at that point, doing a lot of healing touch work. So I was mentoring people on healing touch. So it was like, how do we transform? How do we take these motions? So the first wave of healing touch students in Cincinnati all pretty much came through me. And we got them all through White Willow training, and we started working them on not movements of peace particularly, but how to get these vibration centers in their bodies activated, and then how to activate it on the people. Okay, so as they're doing their chakra work and they're energy things, how to make that a more kinesthetic feeling, how to really get into those zones. So a lot of the people that became some of the early instructors all got the opportunity to work on my table and were able to get those kinesthetic sounds of the different chakras going, and eventually could make that more tangible. And then they developed their own means of teaching that. So it was kind of fun. But at that point, we had like 3,000 people trained in Cincinnati through Whatever Works. So, and Good Sam working conjunctively. So I had a lot of people doing energy work. And I said, now I got to be able to, and my father died that year as well. So I got a little bit of money and I bought my first recording equipment, which I threw away in the dumpster. Just because it's so antiquated now. Wow. It was so high tech at the time. Boy, it was electronic. Okay. And I regretted throwing it away. It had a hard drive that was only like, couldn't store anything on it. But nonetheless, it was fun. And I started working with a musician to say, okay, how do we create these energy fields that I feel in my body, these states of being, these kinesthetic feelings, how do we create that? And he started talking to me about modes and keys and all this sort of stuff. And I just said, no, that's not it. And then I saw Riverdance like the next year, and that guy was playing this, low D whistle, actually a low C whistle in that case. And I was like, whoa, he's playing this steel pipe and he's making all these sounds and all these harmonics. And when the people were dancing with that Irish thing. So then I got into the Irish music thing, and I started to see, because clearly dance and sound and dance music had something to do with this. But at the same time, we recorded the White Willow, the first ones, on cassette tape. So they all had that hiss to them, which I do not miss. Okay, and I'm going through and cleaning up stuff, I'm finding these things, and I said, do I want this, or do I just, okay, it has historical reference. Okay. So, oddly, they create a buzz in your body. So there's something to the cassette things. But, so I was trying to get states of being. And at that point, I had remembered what Bob had said. And, well, actually not what Bob had said, but what I observed with him is I observed, and I observed in my own classes, that when I went into the state, people went into the state with me. And neuro-linguistic programming and Erickson hypnosis talked a lot about this. And we were working on that in 1992, but it evolved quite a bit more. I remember Bob taking a whole group of people, and he just went into Focus 12 and everybody entrained to him. And that's what the speaker does, is the mystic takes you into that. And as you see these mystics or these people that are supposedly the gifted ones and stuff, the Tai Chi masters and things like that. And Tolona, my teacher, was very good at creating an air. And you remember when we had our ballet dancer in, how he would just turn on the energy, okay? And you just are entranced by it. And I forget who the author is, but she said, you're casting a glamour. You know, it's like the diva glamour. You just turn it on, and people are entrained to you. Plus, they also have expectation and projection that they're also using to power your, bounce off of you to create their own state. But every so often you have a person like Ram Dass who could really turn it on. and entrance a whole, thousands of people in meditation. And I'll say this because it was a very good experience, we're in this mosque out in Indianapolis, and Ram Dass was going to lead a meditation. And he never did this. He usually did not do these kind of things because of some kind of spiritual reason. And but he decided to do this. And the recording equipment was on, and they were recording this for a video. And they left the recording equipment running. We did the meditation, and everybody had this transcendent experience. Holy spot. And very powerful. When we were all done, we all just felt, all peaceful and all this sort of thing. Now, of course, he did this after he had talked to us for an hour, so we're all predisposed, and we're all in a kind of harmonic kind of sense anyway. So everybody was wanting to get together, right? So it was easy to do, but the power that was generated was huge. Okay, none of the recording equipment recorded the event. The audio equipment didn't record it. The video equipment didn't record it. Nothing recorded the event. Blank. Okay? People in the parking lot could not start their cars. Car batteries went dead. We didn't know about that right away. We knew that some people had some car problems, but ultimately it turned out that a lot of people had vehicle problems. Their electrical systems didn't work. All right, so this was a powerful force at a predestined time, all in God's plan. Okay, none of it was recorded. So only the people that were there know the experience. So did people get healed from that? I don't know, probably. Did something happen that was non-ordinary? So that's the power of our mind. But you all had a feeling. And this is the thing that you miss, is everybody wants to go into the phantom's interpretation of it and tie it into some kind of science or reason or even their own religious-based things or pseudoscience or pseudo-religions, and they want to all organize it their own way. But it still comes into being egocentric and mind-centric. Okay? It doesn't and they miss the fact of how they feel. And that humming that everybody was feeling in their body. And if you ask people, do you feel that buzz? Yeah. And if you put your hand on somebody, it's the same buzz that you feel. So you're in training to that thing. All right. So I was trying to work with the sound, and it wasn't until I finished up this really advanced Bagua thing in 2003 that I started to realize I can record these sounds. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I can record it. And I had also started taking music, and I was doing music for 3 years. And I had my big 17-inch viola, and I would play it, and it would just like go right through my toes. And I realized how, okay, I can quantify these waves. I can call them a name, all right? And I later found out I couldn't, because I was now moving from mental to mental-centric, mind-centric, into frequency-centric, which is even worse. Okay, we have to quantify everything by a waveform, because that's what everybody was doing. And it, again, was a false premise. So then I built the platform. Okay, and the platform that stand by. platform right here, filled with bass shakers, not the little pucks that we have, and a complete car audio system. Went down to furrows, bought myself some pine, built myself a box in the Tai Chi room. Circular saw buzzing, Connie loved that. And then I created this box. This box has one purpose, and one purpose only, to make me immortal. That was it. Because I was working now from immortality theory. Is how do I get frequencies moving through me? How do I replicate those sounds? I got myself a synthesizer, like Macintosh, and I was working through all possible chords and combinations to get the sounds. Okay? And that broke down tissue adhesions and structures, and it taught me about how the body gets screwed up and how does it get healed by sound, and why frequencies don't work, and you have to go to messages. And then eventually we evolved to the point where started using the voice and creating tones that you couldn't get and harmonics that were coming right from the body itself and recording those. Is what do the tissues say? What do they sound like? All right, so this was the shortcut. Because in doing this, you could do it. You could create wave patterns, healing patterns. Everything that I've been working on for 15 years prior, actually 20 years at that point, because this is 2004, this box. I took this box to UC to give a demonstration, and at that time I just had frequency chords recorded, which were really good, I might add, and knocked out a whole classroom of kids. This one little box and a concrete room just put them all asleep. And they all just like, whoa, that was so cool. And you know, college students are druggies, so they can relate. They wrote up about it too. This woman was doing a paper, not a paper, she did this journal on alternative stuff. And she wrote up about it. She was so blown away by the process. But then I learned about the voice in 2006, and then created a whole new way of talking from the body to the body, to a body, okay? Which is just basically all the hands-on healing. All right, so as I said, that box, you do your Tai Chi form on it, okay? Our form fits on there. I'll show you. It's a 2x4 box. Some of you have one, okay? So you can do all your movements of peace, and the sound is going through you. And the sound synthesizes you. And when I built bigger platforms, it helps you coordinate things. Now, Jen was the first musician to use this box, and one of the things we found is that if you're in this box and you have headphones on, you're in a complete immersion. So your ability to connect with an instrument is greater. So you can get this oneness connection. Now, she wasn't the first person to use it. I forgot. There was a flute player, a Juilliard flute player who tried it first. And I mic'd up her flute, and she was playing her flute, and she was able to get a tonality that she couldn't do. And she was there to take lessons of breath. And she understood the breathing in a way she never could before. And then she went on, and shortly thereafter, in the new YouTube age, she had one of the highest hit pieces of music recorded. 10 million people or something. Okay, it was classical flute. Who the hell wants to listen to that? And she became the flute teacher in the world because she stood on the platform. And she was able to get a tonality that she never had before. As a Juilliard person, a master flautist, studied with all these people, and she realized everybody had taught her wrong. They taught her to breathe wrong, they taught it all, because once she got synced up, and that is the basis of what we're trying to do. To become immortals, we have to sync up all of our movements, okay? To become free in a form, everything has to be unobstructed. It has to be connected. So that means you have to get rid of all the stuff, mental and physical, that's getting in the way of you, okay? And you can't do that until you feel the obstructions of the way, the obstructions of the sounds that your body's supposed to be making. And as we've talked about before, we have this tendency to just, if you will, feel the forms, okay? Feel only some of the sounds and not all of the sounds. And then we also have that ability to just create some of the sounds, break them up into groupings of sounds rather than a unison. So doing a unison is the most important thing, is how do you get all of these movements to be one sound and not 25 sounds, okay? That's the problem. Because it's real easy to make your arms move at one tempo and one kind of thing, but to have everything working as one, really hard, okay? That's why you need a box, a shortcut, a harmonic. So, how do we get then from here to immortality? Well, that took a lot longer to understand, okay? It takes understanding that vocal cord thing. I should say, that trachea thing. All right, so remember what I said, if you set the rings, you get a resonance. Now, how do you learn the rings? Well, you have to do the chanting, you have to do the prayer, you have to break down the adhesions. You have to learn to do that. So, where I'm working with now, what I was working with before, is one of the things in the Wholisound is resurrection was recorded the day after I had my last near-death experience. And I recorded it as, this is the sound that my cells are making when I came back to life. And as Rick went and tested all around the country, people who had near-death experiences said, I remember that sound. It's that buzz. And I call it the angelic call in the book. Okay? It puts you into a state of being, an angelic state of being. And you can use that. But the problem is, again, your brain gets in the way of this. Okay? Doesn't want you to do this. And how do you use it? What's that final twist? Well, that's where you have to attune the angelic call to your keyboard, to your vagus nervous system. Okay? You have to get that whole vagus nervous system, which gets everything resonating to that. So you have to get it through here. Well, how do you do that? Well, if you put headphones on, okay, you're going to vibrate these bones at the head. But if you also use the box, or the little box, you're going to vibrate the bones here. But what you'll find is that your trachea usually isn't vibrating. And that's the trick. Remember, that's the keyboard to the vagus nervous system. It's the keyboard to your consciousness. We've had that lecture before too. So when you link up and you start to have this vibrating, that sound vibrating that's the base vibration, the root vibration, harmonic, that we want to have. Now, we can do this with prayer. You can modulate that to create words. It's kind of a background drone. It's like a bagpipe. You get that bagpipe out there that goes wah, and then you play your little thing on it. Well, a lot of pipes have drones, okay? And a lot of organs will do a drone. They'll just put a chord down, blah, and then they play all this other stuff over it. So you're using a drone, and this root note becomes your drone. And once it's there, it's in your whole nervous system. You can modulate that to, say, your Hail Marys, your Our Fathers, your whatever you want, okay? And that becomes more powerful to move you into opening portals. All right? So everything in my book, The Immortal's Breath, I've just described to you. And the Wholisound platform, or my platform as I like to call it, because I'm Wholisound, okay, was the shortcut of linking the system, all the particles of the system, all the cells of the system, all the tissues of the system into a common unison harmonic. And your voice box becomes, your trachea becomes the way that you can turn that on at any time you need and get your resonance and match resonance with other people. All right, so this is why we've been harping on that, is these fields, these deity fields, these metaphysical fields, states of being as we can call them, can easily be accessed once you learn to control the drum. All right? And all your cells can move into resonance and unison into that. Now, simplistic. That's the simplistic generality of it. Extraordinarily difficult.